Chapter 1. The Fire That Should Not Burn. They arrive already burning. Not from orbit, not from the warp, not through any passage the Imperium can chart. They manifest amidst smoke, amidst ruin, amidst the last breath of a dying battlefield. Space Marines wreathed in corpse fire, their armor blackened like funeral iron, their bones visible beneath scorched ceramite, as if flesh itself has been burned away and yet refuses to die. Bolters roar without sound, flames move without heat, and where they walk, the air itself recoils. This is how the Legion of the Damned enters history, without announcement, without command, without permission. No vox call precedes them. No astropath screams their warning. They do not answer hails. They do not retreat. They do not remain. They are not reinforcements. They are aftermath. Across 10,000 years of war, their appearances are scattered like burn marks across Imperial records, contradictory, incomplete, often sealed or erased entirely. Entire regiments swear they fought beside them. Entire chapters deny they were ever there. Some claim they saved worlds already lost. Others insist they arrived only after exterminatus, fighting on planets already dead. The Administratum calls these accounts unreliable. The dead disagree. They are always Space Marines. They are never from any chapter currently known to exist. Their heraldry is wrong. Skulls aflame, broken sigils, markings that do not align with any codex doctrine. And yet they fight as Astartes. Perfect discipline, flawless marksmanship, absolute tactical clarity. They move through enemy fire untouched, bolter rounds passing through them as if striking smoke. Blades shatter on their armor. Warp entities recoil from their presence, howling as if burned by something older than faith. And then, when the battle turns, when survival is no longer uncertain, they vanish. No bodies, no wounded, no retreat vectors, only scorched ground and silence. The Legion of the Damned is not a chapter. It has no homeworld, no pre-march, no founding date. And that is not an accident, because the Legion is not meant to be understood. It is meant to be encountered. Long before their name entered Imperial myth, there were whispers among fleet crews and void sailors, stories of the burning dead, warriors who appeared in hopeless battles where probability had already collapsed. Veterans spoke of seeing flaming skulls advancing through artillery fire, of bolter shells that left trails of ghost light instead of smoke, of enemies dying with terror frozen across their faces before the killing blow even landed. At first, these were dismissed as stress hallucinations, warp exposure, combat psychosis. Then the reports aligned. Different sectors, different centuries, same descriptions, blackened armor, bone-white skull helms, fire that did not consume, and always the same outcome. The Imperium survived battles it had already lost. Not one. Survived. The Legion does not secure victory. It prevents extinction. This distinction matters. Where loyalist chapters arrive to conquer, defend, or reclaim, the Legion of the Damned appears only at the edge of annihilation, when the last line is breaking, when command structures are gone, when hope has already been declared dead. They do not save worlds. They delay oblivion. There are no official deployment orders for the Legion of the Damned. No High Lord has ever admitted to summoning them. No Inquisitor has successfully tracked their origin. No astropath has ever sent them a message. They answer something else. Some believe they are bound to the Emperor himself. Manifestations of his will bleeding through the veil when faith alone is no longer enough. Others whisper they are warp echoes of fallen Space Marines, souls too stubborn, too duty-bound to pass into death. There are darker theories still, that they are a chapter erased so completely that reality itself rejected their extinction, that they are damned not for treachery, but for failure, that they burn because they cannot die. Imperial tacticians who attempt to study their engagements encounter an impossible pattern. The Legion ignores strategic value. They do not hold choke points. They do not pursue fleeing enemies. They strike only where collapse is imminent. Artillery lines about to fall. Command centers moments from annihilation. Breach points where the enemy would have broken through. And once the balance shifts, they disengage, as if their purpose has concluded, as if some unseen threshold has been met. Those who fight beside them feel it. A pressure, a weight, a cold certainty. The Legion does not inspire courage. It replaces it. Men stop screaming. Wounds stop hurting. Fear becomes irrelevant, not because hope has returned, but because something worse has arrived. Guardsmen have reported realizing, mid-battle, that they were already dead, and that the Legion was simply ensuring their deaths meant something. Space Marines fare no better. Veterans of centuries describe an instinctive unease around the Legion, a recognition buried deep within gene memory that these warriors are wrong, that whatever they are no longer fully bound to the material laws that govern even Astartes. Chaplains fall silent in their presence. Librarians feel the warp recoil, not surge. Machine spirits howl. The Legion does not chant, does not pray, does not acknowledge the Emperor. And yet, demons burn at their touch. The Imperium labels them a myth because myths are safer than truth. Because if the Legion of the Damned is real, if these warriors truly exist outside command, outside death, outside causality, then the Imperium must confront a terrible possibility. That loyalty does not end at death. That duty can damn the soul. That some warriors fight forever, not as heroes, but as consequences. They are not saints. They are not martyrs. They are what remains when sacrifice goes too far to be forgiven. They do not march beneath banners. They walk through fire. And when the last gun falls silent, when the enemy is broken and the Imperium still stands, barely, they fade, leaving behind nothing but scorched ground, unanswered questions, and the unbearable sense that something ancient has passed judgment. The Legion of the Damned does not arrive to be seen. It arrives because extinction came too close, and the galaxy was not yet finished bleeding. Chapter 2, Born from Erasure. They were not founded. They were lost. Long before the Legion of the Damned burned its way into Imperial nightmare, there existed a chapter whose name was struck from record with surgical precision. No proclamation, no declaration of censure, just absence, entire data vaults scrubbed, sigils erased, honors revoked as if they had never drawn breath. The Imperium does not erase lightly. It forgets through neglect. It buries through bureaucracy. But erasure, total, deliberate erasure, is reserved for failures too dangerous to remember. This is where the truth begins to bleed through. Fragments remain, not enough to form certainty, just enough to haunt. A chapter deployed beyond the Astronomican's reach, a crusade that pushed too far into void regions where the warp thins and reality fractures, a fleet that vanished without a final astropathic scream. The name Firehawk surfaces again and again, usually followed by redaction, contradiction, or outright denial. A loyalist chapter, codex compliant, unremarkable, until it wasn't. The Firehawks were sent where others could not go. Deep void patrols, lost systems, regions where astropaths went blind and navigators bled from the eyes. Their crusade was not glorious. It was silent. Years stretched into decades, decades into centuries. Then came the disaster. Not a battle, not a rebellion, but a translation. Their fleet entered the warp and did not emerge. No wreckage, no survivors, no distress call, just absence. The Imperium marked them lost in the warp, a common fate, quickly archived and quietly forgotten. Except the warp does not forget. When the Legion of the Damned first appeared, centuries later, veterans noticed something wrong. Their armor patterns matched outdated Firehawk schematics. Their squad markings mirrored obsolete heraldry. Their tactics echoed Codex doctrine from a bygone era. And their colors, black and ceramite scorched beneath layers of immaterial flame, looked eerily like red once burned away. Coincidence, the administratum said. The dead said otherwise. Warp exposure does not simply kill. Sometimes it changes. The Firehawks did not die in the Imperium. They were unmade, their bodies stripped of mortality, their souls flayed across a realm where time, faith, and flesh lose meaning. What emerged was not alive, but it was not dead. It was bound to duty, bound to war, bound to a promise they could no longer remember making. They returned not as warriors, but as echoes, burning imprints of space marines whose loyalty had nowhere left to go. This is why the Legion burns, not with heat, with warp fire, a constant state of immaterial combustion, souls screaming silently within armor that refuses to disintegrate, bone exposed, yet intact, flesh absent, yet implied. Astartes reduced to the idea of themselves, held together by faith, obligation, and something darker, refusal. The warp does not grant gifts without cost. The Legion of the Damned is not empowered. It is punished. Their flames are not blessings. They are scars, manifestations of the Imperium clinging to them like a curse that never finishes killing its host. Every step they take bleeds unreality into real space. This is why bolter rounds pass through them, why blades shatter on contact, why demons recoil. They exist partially elsewhere, half in Imperium, half still trapped in the place that devoured them. They are not immune. They are untethered. And this is why they cannot remain. Each second in real space destabilizes them further. They flicker. They phase. Their outlines blur as reality attempts to reject them. Prolonged presence would tear open localized warp breaches. So they fight fast, strike hard, and vanish the moment their purpose is fulfilled. Not retreat. Dissolution. They fade because staying would unmake the battlefield itself. The Imperium cannot acknowledge this truth, because if the Legion of the Damned is the Firehawks, if loyal Space Marines can be damned not by heresy, but by service, then the Imperium must face a blasphemy too severe to contemplate. That loyalty does not guarantee salvation. That duty can condemn. That the Emperor's wars may claim more than life. So the records remain sealed, the connection denied, the Legion reclassified as myth. But myths do not leave bolter casings fused into glass. There are no reinforcements for the Legion, no new recruits, no gene seed recovery, no apothecaries. Every legionnaire who falls is gone forever, which means their numbers are finite, dwindling. Every appearance costs them something, and still they answer, because whatever they became in the warp stripped away fear, doubt, and hope, but did not take their oath. They fight not because they believe. They fight because they cannot stop, because somewhere, in whatever remains of their souls, the command still echoes. Stand. Hold. Do not let humanity fall, even if it costs eternity. Chapter 3. The Damnation That Answers. They do not choose the battlefield. The battlefield summons them. Across the Imperium's long death spiral, there are moments when probability collapses, when logistics fail, when voxnets fall silent, when even faith can no longer bridge the distance between survival and extinction. It is in these moments, when the last line is already broken, that the Legion of the Damned manifests. Not consistently, not predictably, but inevitably. They are not deployed. They are triggered. Imperial tacticians have tried vainly to isolate the pattern. They appear most often alongside Space Marines, rarely beside the Astra Militarum alone. They do not reinforce crusades at their height, nor do they arrive during triumphant counteroffensives. They emerge when loyalist Astartes are on the brink of annihilation, when chapters face extinction events, when command has collapsed, when the warp itself presses too close to real space. This is not coincidence. The Legion of the Damned does not answer strategic need. It answers terminal failure. There are battles where they arrive seconds before the final breach. There are wars where they manifest after exterminatus, fighting on worlds already declared dead. There are even recorded instances where they appear after the last loyal Vox transmission. Battles officially lost, then mysteriously reversed. The Administratum explains these as clerical delays. The dead know better. Unlike demonic manifestations, the Legion leaves no warp storms in its wake, no lingering corruption, no psychic backlash. In fact, warp activity often recedes in their presence. Demons weaken, sorcery falters, possessed entities scream, not in rage, but recognition. Because the Legion is not warp-born, it is warp-scarred. There's a difference. Demons are made of the Imperium. The Legion has been burned by it. They carry the warp like radiation, poisoned, unstable, lethal to entities native to it. This is why their bolter fire can immolate demons without sanctified ammunition. Why warp entities recoil as if struck by something anathema. The Legion is not holy. It is incompatible. This is also why they do not speak. Voxcasters do not transmit their voices. Helm grills emit nothing but static and low-frequency distortion. Attempts at psychic contact collapse instantly. Librarians report a sensation not of resistance, but of absence, as if the Legionnaires are hollow silhouettes where souls should be, not empty, elsewhere. And yet, they recognize loyalty. They fight alongside loyalist Space Marines with flawless coordination, integrating into formations without orders, covering flanks without communication, advancing and withdrawing in perfect synchronicity. They ignore human troops unless absolutely necessary, treating guardsmen not as allies, but as variables too fragile to rely upon. This is not arrogance. It is calculation. The Legion does not protect morale. It protects outcomes. They do not pursue retreating enemies. They do not secure territory. They do not remain once the balance tips. Their purpose ends the moment annihilation is averted. Victory is irrelevant. Survival is sufficient. There are records, sealed, fragmented, of battles where the Legion turned against those it had just aided. Not traitors, survivors, on worlds where victory came at unacceptable cost, where loyal forces were too compromised, too exposed to corruption, too weakened to endure. The Legion did not depart. It cleansed. No declarations, no accusations, just fire. Entire strike forces erased after the war was won, their existence quietly removed from Imperial archives. These incidents are marked not as massacres, but as containment failures. The Legion does not judge intent. It judges outcomes. This is the true horror of their damnation. They are not bound by mercy. They are not constrained by politics. They are not limited by fear of censure. They exist beyond consequence, because they have already paid the highest cost imaginable. The Emperor has never acknowledged them. No vision, no miracle, no sanction, and yet they fight for his Imperium with the purity few living warriors can match. Some ecclesiarchs whisper that they are saints, martyrs elevated beyond flesh. Others denounce them as abominations, proof that even loyalty can rot into monstrosity if taken too far. Both are wrong. The Legion of the Damned is not exalted. It is trapped, bound to the last command they ever received. Hold the line. Do not yield. Do not let humanity fall, even if the price is eternal fire. They are not hope. They are the thing that arrives after hope fails. A reminder that the Imperium survives not because it deserves to, but because something far worse refuses to let it die. Chapter 4. The Burning Form. They look like Space Marines only at a distance. Up close, the lie collapses. Armor hangs from them like a memory of war rather than its instrument. Blackened ceramite split and cracked, edges glowing faintly as if heat still lives inside the metal. Chapter markings are scorched beyond recognition. skulls half melted into plates, purity seals burned to ash yet still clinging where wax should have fallen away centuries ago. And beneath the armor, bone, not exposed through damage, not revealed by wounds, simply there, ribs visible through gaps where flesh should exist. Skull helms fused to skulls that may no longer be helms at all, jaws locked in permanent grimace, teeth bared not in rage, but in permanence. There's no blood, because there's nothing left to bleed. The flames are the worst part. They do not flicker like fire. They do not consume fuel. They do not spread. They cling. Warp flame coils around limbs and pauldrons, licking at armor without melting it, burning without heat, casting light that feels wrong to the eye. Auspex readings register nothing. No temperature increase. No radiation spike. Just distortion. Reality bending slightly around them, as if the universe itself is uncomfortable acknowledging their presence. These flames are not weapons. They are symptoms. The Legion's physiology defies every biological law the Imperium understands. They move with full Astartes speed and strength, yet show no signs of musculature beneath the armor. No respiration. No heartbeats detectable even at point-blank range. Apothecaries who have examined fallen legionnaires, rare though such moments are, report no viable gene seed, no organs, no living tissue. Just ash. And something else. Something anchored. Their weapons mirror them. Bolters fire rounds wreathed in ghost light. Shells that phase through armor before detonating inside the target. Chain blades scream without mechanical vibration. Teeth tearing through ceramite as if it were paper soaked in oil. Power weapons crackle with energies that do not register as plasma, electricity, or warp discharge. Something older are. They do not reload. They do not run dry. Their ammunition manifests as needed, drawn from whatever binds them to reality. This is not logistics. It is inevitability. When wounded, they do not react. Limbs severed do not fall. They dissolve into smoke and reform seconds later, reassembling as if the Legionnaire is being remembered back into shape by some unseen force. Shots that should cripple past through torsos, leaving glowing holes that slowly close, flames sealing the wound where flesh never existed. But they can be destroyed. When a Legionnaire falls completely, it is not dramatic. No scream, no explosion, no collapse. They simply fade. Flame gutters out. Armor crumbles into inert ash. Bone vanishes last. No corpse remains. Just absence. This is why the Imperium fears them. Not because they are powerful, but because they are finite. Each manifestation costs them something irretrievable. Each battle thins their numbers. Each death is permanent, and still they come. Librarians who have dared to look too closely report something unsettling. The Legion does not exist as individuals. There are no distinct psychic signatures, no identifiable souls. Instead, there is a single vast presence, collective echo, like many voices screaming the same oath in perfect unison across time and space. Not a hive mind, a chorus trapped mid-note, since the moment they were lost in the warp. This is why they move without orders, why they act with perfect unity, why no Legionnaire ever hesitates. They are not thinking, they are remembering, replaying the last command they ever received, over and over, wherever reality allows them to intrude. The Ecclesiarchy calls their flames holy. The Inquisition calls them anomalous. The Adeptus Mechanicus classifies them as a paradox and refuses further study. Veterans call them something else entirely. They call them the Burned Ones, because once you've seen them up close, you understand the truth. The Legion of the Damned is not alive, not dead, not blessed, not cursed. They are what happens when duty survives the destruction of the soul. And fire is the only shape that truth can take. Chapter 5, War Without Salvation. They do not fight like heroes. They fight like something that is already lost. Where Loyalist chapters advance with banners, formations, and doctrine, the Legion of the Damned enters combat as a pressure, an encroaching inevitability that collapses the enemy's future before the present has time to react. There's no opening salvo meant to inspire courage, no rallying cry, no moment where the battle begins. It simply ends slowly, from the inside outward. The Legion does not deploy across a front. They appear at fracture points, command bunkers moments before overrun, breach points where defenses are about to fail, ritual sites seconds before the warp tears fully open. They materialize in fire and silence, already inside the enemy's intent, already where resistance was supposed to hold. This is not strategy. It is predestination. Their warfare ignores principles that define Imperial battle doctrine. They do not secure supply lines. They do not establish fallback positions. They do not concern themselves with casualties, neither theirs nor their allies, because they are not here to win. They are here to deny the enemy a future where humanity does not exist. Against Xenos, their presence is baffling. Orcs, creatures of momentum and belief, falter when the Legion advances. Their psychic gestalt recoils, not because the Legion inspires fear, but because it inspires finality. There's no fight to be had, no glory, no war song, just extinction approaching in silence. Eldar seers describe the Legion as blind spots in fate. Futures fracture around them. Prophecy fails. Paths that should exist simply stop. To the Eldar, who live by foresight, this is terror beyond death. Tyranids respond differently. They attack without hesitation, and they die. The Legion offers no biomass worth consuming, no psychic signal worth adapting to, just fire and loss. Hive fleets divert around them when possible, not out of fear, but calculation. The Legion is not prey. It is inefficiency. Against chaos, the Legion becomes something else entirely. They do not banish demons with prayer or ritual. They burn them away through proximity alone. Warp entities unravel near them, forms destabilizing as if exposed to something poisonous to their nature. Possessed warriors scream, not in rage, but in recognition, because whatever the Legion has become, it has passed through the warp and returned wrong, not aligned, not corrupted, but scarred in a way the Imperium cannot tolerate. They do not pursue fleeing enemies. Once resistance breaks, the Legion disengages, not because the enemy has escaped, but because the outcome is already sealed. Chaos cultists who survive their initial assault often fall to madness shortly after, unable to reconcile what they encountered. Some turn on one another, some self-immolate, some simply stop moving. The Legion does not need to finish them. Reality does that part on its own. Imperial forces who fight alongside them rarely feel victorious. Relief is absent. Instead, there's an aftertaste, an awareness that the battle was never truly theirs, that something else intervened, something that did not care whether they lived or died, only that the Imperium did not fall today. Commanders report a strange phenomenon. Orders issued during Legion engagements are often obeyed before being spoken. Tactical adjustments seem to already have happened. Entire maneuvers complete themselves as if guided by unseen hands. Time bends slightly around them, not enough to notice, enough to matter. This is why the Legion does not linger. Their continued presence destabilizes causality. Probability becomes unreliable. Vox logs desync. Chronometers drift. The longer they remain, the more reality resists them. They are not meant to be here. They are tolerated, briefly. When the Legion departs, the battlefield feels emptier than it should. Not just cleared, hollowed, as if something essential passed through and took part of the world with it. Veterans often report difficulty recalling details of the Legion's appearance. Faces blur, numbers fluctuate, entire squads remembered and then forgotten mid-sentence. Records contradict eyewitness accounts. Pick captures degrade into static or flame-distorted silhouettes. The Legion resists documentation, not intentionally, existentially. The Imperium calls this divine intervention. It is wrong. Divinity implies intention. The Legion does not choose to intervene. It responds, automatically, like a failsafe built into reality itself, triggered when extinction crosses a threshold too close to absolute. This is why their wars feel empty, why there is no catharsis, why survivors struggle to speak of them, because salvation was never offered, only delay. The Legion of the Damned does not bring hope. It buys time, and time, in the 41st millennium, is the cruelest currency of all. Chapter 6, The Emperor's Silence. They do not bear his sigil. That is the first heresy people notice. No Aquila blazes on their chests. No imperial creed etched into their plate. No litany scroll from their armor in sacred script. And yet, demons burn at their approach. This contradiction has gnawed at the Imperium for millennia. The Legion of the Damned does not pray. No chaplain leads them. No catechisms echo before battle. No cries of "for the Emperor" break the silence of their advance. Faith, as the Imperium understands it, plays no role in their war. And still chaos recoils. This alone has sparked centuries of theological war within the ecclesiarchy. If the Legion is holy, why do they not worship? If they are damned, why does the warp flee them? If they serve the Emperor, why has he never claimed them? There are no visions of them in sanctioned scripture. No saints speak their name. No miracle ever attributes itself to them. The Emperor has never acknowledged the Legion of the Damned. Not once. This absence is not neutral. In the Imperium, silence from the throne is meaning. The Emperor speaks through dreams, through saints, through possessed relics and burning martyrs. Entire crusades have been launched on less than a whisper. Yet the Legion, present at thousands of extinction-level events, receives nothing. No blessing, no condemnation, no absolution. It is as if the Emperor looks at them and looks away. Some theologians argue this proves their sanctity, that the Legion has transcended the need for guidance, that they are instruments so perfectly aligned with his will that acknowledgement is unnecessary. Others call this heresy of the highest order, because what is unacknowledged can also be unwanted. There is a forbidden text, sealed within the deepest vaults of the Ordo Malleus, referenced only in fragmented citations. It describes a conclave where a senior inquisitor asked the unthinkable question: what if the Legion exists because the Emperor cannot end them? The inquiry did not survive the meeting. To understand the Legion's relationship to the Emperor, one must abandon the idea of blessing. The Legion is not empowered by him. They are left behind by him. When a space marine dies, his soul is said to pass into the Emperor's light, absorbed, reforged, or at least released from duty. The Legion of the Damned did not receive this mercy. Their souls were torn apart in the warp, fragmented and fused into something else. The Emperor did not save them. He did not retrieve them. And yet, he did not erase them either. This is the cruelty of it. They were abandoned mid-sacrifice. Some inquisitors believe this was intentional, that the Emperor, bound to the Golden Throne and bleeding power into the warp just to keep humanity alive, cannot afford mercy, that the Legion is collateral, souls burned to stabilize reality during moments of catastrophic failure. Not warriors, seals, living wards hammered into the cracks of existence. Others fear a darker possibility, that the Legion is not bound to the Emperor at all, that they answer something older, something woven into the Imperium before faith replaced survival, before worship replaced command. Consider this. The Legion responds to extinction events, not prayers. They do not appear when faith is strong. They do not answer devotion. They arrive when survival probability drops below a critical threshold. This is not divine. It is mechanical, as if the Imperium itself, its vast, dying mass of souls, has developed an unconscious reflex, a scream loud enough to pull the Legion back into real space. Not summoned, triggered. This is why they do not save people. They save systems. Why they fight beside Space Marines, not civilians. Why they hold the line long enough for the Imperium to continue, not for humanity to thrive. The Emperor wanted an Imperium that would endure. The Legion enforces that mandate, without compassion. There are moments, rare, horrifying moments, when Imperial commanders have attempted to thank the Legion. They receive no response. But those who try to follow them afterward report something else. A pressure behind the eyes, a heat in the skull, a warning without words. Do not follow. Do not witness. Do not understand. This is the truth the ecclesiarchy cannot accept. The Legion of the Damned does not represent the Emperor's love. It represents his absence, the place where mercy ran out. And still they fight for him, not because he commands it, but because no one ever told them to stop. They are not saints. They are not angels. They are the remainder of duty left burning after salvation failed. Chapter 7. The Battlefields That Remember. They do not leave relics. No banners. No fallen brothers to entomb. No weapons to sanctify. Yet some battlefields never heal. Long after the Legion of the Damned has vanished, after the smoke thins, and the Imperium moves on to its next war, there are places where reality remains wrong, where the ground remembers something it should not have witnessed. These are the places the Administratum quietly abandons. On such worlds, Auspex readings become unreliable. Vox traffic echoes back with half-second delays. Fires burn without fuel. Shadows linger where nothing stands to cast them. Soldiers report the smell of ash even on barren rock. Report heatless warmth washing over them in waves, like standing too close to a memory of flame. These are not warp-tainted zones. That distinction matters. There's no demonic residue, no psychic corruption, no increase in possession or mutation. In fact, sanctioned psychers report less warp activity in these regions, as if something scorched the Imperium itself and left behind a cauterized wound. The Legion does not corrupt space. It scars it. Entire regiments have refused redeployment orders to worlds where the Legion fought, not out of fear, out of certainty. A certainty that whatever came through that battlefield is not finished with it. There is a recorded engagement on the edge of Segmentum Obscurus, designation expunged, where the Legion appeared to halt a chaos incursion moments before planetary collapse. The enemy was annihilated, the rift sealed, victory declared. Within a solar week, every astropath on the planet went silent. Not dead, disconnected, their souls unreachable, as if something had severed the planet from the warp entirely. Imperial vessels attempting translation nearby reported extreme navigational instability, as though the Imperium itself recoiled from the system. The planet was quarantined, then forgotten. This is the cost of the Legion's intervention. They do not simply fight on a battlefield. They overwrite it. The moment they manifest, the rules bend. Probability tightens. Cause and effect shorten. The battlefield becomes a place where outcomes matter more than actions. This is why veterans say the fighting felt inevitable. Not desperate, not heroic, final. There are places where picked feeds from Legion engagements still exist. They are never clear. Frames glitch. Flames blur into white noise. Legionnaires appear and disappear between frames without movement. Some pics show Space Marines fighting beside shapes that are later missing when reviewed again, as if the footage itself cannot decide whether the Legion was truly present. Archivists attempting to stabilize these records often experience severe migraines, nosebleeds, or loss of short-term memory. The Adeptus Mechanicus has declared such files ontologically unstable and sealed them. You cannot preserve what should not have existed. The most disturbing battlefields are the quiet ones, worlds saved without visible damage. No craters, no mass graves, no ruined cities, just emptiness. Populations gone, infrastructure intact, entire cultures vanished without signs of struggle. It is in these places that the Legion's shadow feels longest. Imperial investigators initially blamed Xeno's abduction, warp displacement, or exterminatus misclassification. Then survivors began reporting sightings, burning figures standing motionless in the streets long after the fighting had ended, watching, waiting, not hostile, not protective, present. Some believe these are residual echoes, after images burned into the fabric of reality. Others whisper that not all legionnaires leave when the battle ends, that some remain, tethered to places where the price of survival was too high to be reconciled. These whispers never last. Those who spread them tend to disappear from record. Space Marines are not immune to this unease. Chapters that have fought beside the Legion often refuse to return to those war zones. Chaplains report a loss of spiritual resonance, as if prayers spoken their fall into a void and never return. Librarians complain of dead zones in the warp, areas where foresight collapses and psychic senses report nothing at all. To a psyker, this is terror. The warp is never silent, unless something burned it quiet. There is a final truth hidden within these scarred battlefields. The Legion does not simply arrive from elsewhere. It pulls part of elsewhere with it. Every manifestation drags fragments of the Imperium into real space, controlled, constrained, temporary. When the Legion departs, most of that distortion recedes. Most. What remains is a scar where reality remembers being bent too far. This is why the Imperium pretends these places do not exist. Why they are left off star charts. Why their names vanish from shipping routes. Why pilgrimages are forbidden. Because if too many people look too closely, they might realize something unbearable. That the Legion of the Damned is not a miracle. It is damage. Permanent, accumulating damage. And damage, once understood, invites fear. Fear invites questions. And questions lead to answers the Imperium cannot afford. The Legion saves worlds, but it leaves them wounded, and some wounds never close. Chapter 8. The damned do not rest. They do not withdraw. That is the lie most records tell. Imperial after-action reports use the word departure, as if the Legion of the Damned leaves a battlefield the way living forces do, by choice, by order, by exhaustion. But this framing is wrong. It misunderstands what the Legion is. The Legion does not rest because rest implies completion, and the damned are never complete. When the Legion fades, it is not retreat. It is destabilization. Their presence in real space is a violation that cannot be sustained indefinitely. Every second they exist outside the warp is an act of resistance against the state they were reduced to when they were lost. They are not anchored by flesh, or blood, or breath. They are anchored by obligation alone, and obligation is not enough to hold reality open forever. So they burn brighter, then thinner, then not at all. This is why they cannot remain to rebuild, to garrison, to defend. Not because they refuse, because if they stayed, the world would tear itself apart trying to reject them. The Legion of the Damned does not end wars. It interrupts extinction, and interruption is temporary by nature. There are moments, recorded, classified, denied, where the Legion reappeared on the same battlefield more than once. Not days later, not years, centuries. The same city, the same ruined spire, the same defensive line, different war, different enemy, same fire. Imperial historians cannot reconcile this. The structures should not still exist. The ground should not remember where to break. And yet, when the Legion manifests again, they do so in the same places, as if drawn back to scars they themselves created, as if those wounds never truly healed. This suggests something deeply unsettling, that the Legion does not roam freely, that it is caught, not bound to time as the living are, but tethered to moments of collapse, reappearing where reality once failed and threatens to fail again. The warp does not respect chronology. It remembers trauma more faithfully than history, and the Legion is made of trauma. They are not wandering ghosts. They are pressure points. Wherever humanity nearly ended, they left an imprint. Wherever that imprint weakens, they are pulled back through. This explains why they do not grow. No new legionnaires have ever been observed. No reinforcements arrive. No variants in equipment beyond degradation. The Legion's numbers are static or shrinking. Every loss is permanent. Every battle bleeds them thinner. And still they answer. There's a phrase used in sealed inquisitorial documents, never spoken aloud: terminal loyalty. It describes devotion so complete that it survives the destruction of the self. Loyalty stripped of hope, reward, or identity, reduced to a single function that cannot shut down. The Legion of the Damned is terminal loyalty made manifest. They are not motivated. They are stuck. This is why no legionnaire has ever been seen to hesitate. Why none have ever broken formation. Why none have ever turned away from a fight. Hesitation requires a future where retreat is possible. They do not possess that future. Some inquisitors, usually those who do not survive long enough to be censured, have proposed a forbidden hypothesis, that the Legion of the Damned is not fully aware, not unconscious, but no longer choosing, that their consciousness is locked at the moment of loss, replaying a command loop that never terminates. Not madness, not possession, automation, Astartes reduced to function. If this is true, then the Legion is not heroic. It is tragic beyond measure, because it means that somewhere, buried beneath fire and warp scarring, fragments of Space Marines still exist, unable to disobey, unable to stand down, unable to accept that the war they were fighting ended 10,000 years ago. And yet, there are moments that contradict this. Rare, fragmentary, terrifying, moments where the Legion appears to choose. During the defense of a dying Forge world, designation erased, the Legion manifested as expected, turning the tide against a chaos incursion. Victory was achieved. The Imperium survived. Then the Legion did not fade. They remained. Hours passed, then days. They stood motionless among the ruins, flames low, weapons lowered but not deactivated. Tech priests attempting to approach were vaporized without warning, not by attack, but by proximity, as if reality itself rejected the interaction. No threat remained, and still the Legion stayed, until a single surviving Space Marine, last of his chapter, wounded beyond recovery, crawled from the rubble and collapsed before them. Witnesses report that one Legionnaire stepped forward. Just one. It knelt. No Vox transmission followed. No psychic event. No miracle. But when the Legion finally vanished, the wounded Astartes was gone as well. No body was ever found. The report was sealed. The witnesses reassigned. The implications never addressed. If the Legion is incapable of choice, why kneel? If they are soulless echoes, why respond to loss? If they are automatons of duty, why recognize finality? This is the crack in the Imperium's certainty, the suggestion that something still endures inside the fire, not enough to save themselves, but enough to remember what they were. This possibility terrifies the Ordo Malleus more than any demonic theory, because if the Legion still contains will, even fractured, diminished will, then their suffering is not static. It is ongoing, and that would mean the Imperium is complicit in condemning loyal warriors to eternal torment every time it allows the Legion to answer the call. Which raises the question no one dares ask. If the Legion of the Damned can still choose, why do they keep coming? There is no reward waiting for them, no absolution, no recognition, no end, only fire, only war, only thinning existence. And yet they return, again and again, whenever extinction draws close. Perhaps this is the final truth. Not that they are forced, not that they are bound, but that even stripped of flesh, stripped of future, stripped of self, they would still stand. Because duty was never something they believed in. It was something they were. The Legion of the Damned does not rest because rest would mean accepting that the Imperium can fall without them, and they will not accept that. Not now. Not ever. Even if the price is endless fire. Chapter 9. When the fire goes out, they have no end written for them. That is the cruelest part. Every weapon the Imperium forges has a termination state. Every protocol assumes failure, obsolescence, replacement. Even Titans are built to fall. Even Primarchs were meant to die. But the Legion of the Damned was never built. It was broken into existence. And broken things do not come with instructions for stopping. The question is asked only in sealed rooms, only in voices kept deliberately low. What happens when the Legion is no longer needed? Not if. When? Because even the Imperium, rotting, endless, cruel, imagines a future where a war ends. A moment where extinction is not imminent. A thin, impossible sliver of stability where humanity is no longer collapsing every second of its existence. What happens then to a force that exists only to prevent collapse? The Legion has never appeared during peacetime, never during compliance actions, never during expansion, never during moments of strength. They manifest only at the edge of total loss. This implies something horrifyingly precise. They are calibrated, not to war, to failure. There are inquisitors, radicals, usually and always short-lived, who believe the Legion is not reacting to events in real space at all. They believe it is responding to metrics, abstract thresholds buried deep in the Imperium's psychic mass, population collapse curves, faith entropy, the Astronomican's fluctuation margins. When enough of these values cross a critical boundary, the Legion is pulled through like a pressure valve releasing, not by will, by necessity. If this theory is true, then the Legion of the Damned is not a force acting for the Imperium. It is a system acting within it, an immune response, a fever, and fevers do not care whether the host survives the cure. This reframes every appearance. The Legion does not arrive to save heroes. It arrives to stabilize trends. It does not care who lives, only that humanity does not end today. This is why they have turned on allies, why they have erased survivors, why they have purged worlds already won. Those elements were liabilities, risk factors, variables that push the system back toward collapse. This is why the Legion does not mourn its dead, because mourning implies loss, and loss is already assumed. The possibility that the Legion will one day be unnecessary terrifies the Imperium's hidden masters, because no one knows what unnecessary means to a force that has never stopped burning. Do they fade? Do they unravel? Or do they seek new thresholds? There are fragments, ancient, pre-heresy fragments, hinting at a contingency the Emperor himself may have designed but never intended to activate fully. A last resort failsafe. Not a weapon. A consequence. Something unleashed only when the Imperium's survival probability drops below acceptable margins. If this is true, then the Legion of the Damned is not an accident of the warp. It is the Emperor's final refusal. But even contingencies have limits. Every manifestation costs the Legion coherence. Every battle erodes definition. Legionnaires flicker longer now before stabilizing. Their forms blur more often. Some arrive incomplete, missing limbs that never reform, skulls cracked and never repaired. Their fire burns lower, not weaker, thinner. This suggests entropy, not physical decay, ontological exhaustion. They are running out of being. And yet, this should not be possible. Warp entities do not exhaust. Demons reform endlessly. Concepts persist as long as belief sustains them. The Legion is different, because they are not sustained by belief. They are sustained by obligation, and obligation can be fulfilled. There are whispers, again whispers, of battles where the Legion arrived and did not intervene. They manifested. They stood. They watched. And then they faded without firing a shot. In these cases, Imperial forces still lost. Completely. Worlds gone. Systems erased. and the Legion did nothing. This is the most disturbing data point of all, because it implies choice, or worse, assessment, that the Legion is no longer responding to extinction alone, but to viability, that some losses are now considered acceptable. If this trend continues, then one day the Legion will stop appearing not because it's gone, but because the Imperium no longer qualifies. This is why the High Lords suppress all discussion of Legion activity metrics, why Inquisitors who correlate appearances with sector-wide decay vanish, why the Adeptus Mechanicus is forbidden from modeling Legion probability curves, because the answer might be knowable, and knowing would change everything. Imagine the truth becoming public, that there exists a line unseen, unmarked, beyond which humanity is no longer worth saving, that the Legion of the Damned has already begun to step back, not out of weakness, out of completion. What happens when fire goes out? Do the Legionnaires finally dissolve, souls unraveling into nothing, their duty complete at last? Or do they remain, untethered, purposeless, burning with nowhere left to manifest? A force without a trigger, a weapon without a war. Some fear that in such a moment, the Legion would not fade. It would turn inward. If extinction is inevitable, then containment becomes the only function left. And containment does not require mercy. This is why certain Ordo Malleus vaults contain a final, unsanctioned hypothesis, never circulated, never approved, that the Legion of the Damned is not humanity's last defense against extinction. It is humanity's last judgment. If the Imperium proves itself unworthy of survival, too corrupt, too broken, too dangerous to endure, then the Legion will not intervene. It will finalize. This theory has never been tested, because to test it would require crossing the threshold deliberately, and no one, not even the High Lords, dares risk discovering what waits on the other side. So the Imperium continues as it always has, bleeding, burning, calling for help at the edge of collapse, and the Legion still answers, for now. But the fire does not burn forever. Even damnation has limits, and when the Legion of the Damned finally stops coming, it will not be because the war is over. It will be because the verdict has been reached. Chapter 10, The Verdict of Ash. They do not announce judgment. Judgment does not need a voice. When the Legion of the Damned arrives now, there is a subtle difference, something veterans feel before they can articulate it. The fire burns the same. The silence remains absolute. The enemy still dies. But the weight has changed. The Legion no longer feels like a wall holding back extinction. It feels like a scale measuring it. There was a time when their arrival carried inevitability, when collapse meant intervention, when annihilation summoned fire without exception. That certainty is gone. The Legion has become selective, not strategic, evaluative. Imperial savants avoid this conclusion because it implies agency, and agency implies purpose beyond reaction. But the data, fragmentary, censored, incomplete, points in one direction. The Legion does not answer every last stand anymore. Some worlds burn alone. These are not minor losses, not fringe systems, not expendable outposts. These are worlds with Astartes garrisons, shrine planets with millennia of devotion, forge worlds whose output fed entire sectors, places where the Legion should have appeared, and did not. The Imperium does not record these absences as anomalies. It records them as tactical failures, because the alternative is unbearable. Where the Legion does arrive, its conduct has grown colder, faster, more absolute. They do not linger at breach points. They do not stabilize lines. They strike command centers, psychic nodes, population cores. They end wars by removing the possibility of recovery. This is no longer delay. It is culling. Some Inquisitors believe the Legion has begun enforcing a new metric, survivability per cost. Worlds that require too much intervention, too much distortion, too much sacrifice to preserve, are no longer reinforced. They are written off, not by the High Lords, by the fire. This reframes every act of mercy the Legion once embodied. They were never saving everything. They were preserving momentum. Humanity, pushed forward one catastrophe at a time, kept alive not by hope but by refusal to stop. Now that momentum is failing. Too many losses, too many collapses, too much rot. The Imperium bleeds faster than the Legion can cauterize. This is where the myth fractures. Because myths promise salvation, the Legion never did. There is a sealed record from a Black Templar crusade, designation burned, where the Legion manifested in orbit, visible to augur arrays, flame signatures confirmed. They did not deploy. They hovered. They watched the surface burn. Then they vanished. The crusade was annihilated. Every Astartes killed. The planet fell to chaos. The Legion did nothing. This moment changed everything, because it proved restraint. And restraint is worse than absence. The Ordo Malleus classified the event as a false positive manifestation. The Ordo Hereticus erased the fleet logs. The surviving astropath was executed. But the truth remains. The Legion chose not to intervene. Why? Not corruption, not heresy, not lack of faith. By all imperial metrics, the world was loyal, but it was lost, beyond acceptable recovery. This is the verdict the Legion now delivers. Not good or evil, not loyalty or treachery, but viability. In this light, the Legion of the Damned becomes something unbearable. Not defenders, not martyrs, but auditors. They do not fight for humanity. They fight for the continuation of humanity as a system, and systems do not grieve individual components. This explains the most disturbing change of all. The Legion now kills faster, less spectacle, less presence, more precision. They no longer burn across battlefields. They erase decision points. Commanders die first, psychers second, population centers last. They remove futures. To be judged by the Legion is not to be condemned. It is to be measured, and measurement implies comparison, which means some losses are now considered necessary. There is a belief among certain doomed commanders, a superstition perhaps, that if they fight better, if they hold longer, if they make their extinction more costly, the Legion will come, as if performance still matters. This belief is false. The Legion does not reward valor. It responds to thresholds. And thresholds are rising. The Imperium is learning this the hard way. Wars once saved by impossible intervention now end in silence. Battlefields that would have burned with ghost fire remain dark. No flames, no skulls, no salvation, just loss. This is why the High Lords fear the Legion more now than ever before. Because a weapon that always fires can be planned around. A weapon that hesitates must be pleased. And no one knows what pleases the fire. There is one final horror buried beneath all speculation. What if the Legion is not withdrawing? What if it is preparing, accumulating absences, letting failures compound, allowing entropy to rise, not to end humanity, but to justify something final? Because judgment is not always immediate. Sometimes it waits until the verdict is undeniable. The Legion of the Damned does not rage. It does not despair. It watches, and when it burns now, it burns with finality, not to save, but to decide what remains worth saving. Chapter 11, What Remains. The galaxy does not notice endings. It notices absence. Stars still burn. Fleets still translate. Wars still ignite across a million fronts. To the Imperium, existence is noise, endless, grinding, deafening noise. Against this backdrop, the Legion of the Damned could vanish entirely, and most of humanity would never know. That is how close they already are to being gone. There was never a moment when the Legion began to fade. No announcement, no diminishing blaze, no final stand. They have simply been appearing less. Not in fewer wars, but in fewer decisive wars. The Legion no longer comes to tip the balance. It comes to ensure that what survives is worth the cost of survival, and this distinction is everything. In wars where the Imperium fights only to prolong suffering, where no recovery is possible, where victory would merely delay collapse by a few decades, the Legion is absent. These conflicts end the way wars are supposed to end in the 41st millennium, in ruin, in ash, in silence. The Legion does not intervene to preserve corpses that still breathe. What remains, then, when the Legion does not come? The answer is not heroism. It is entropy. Without the Legion, extinction events cascade faster. Systems fall in chains rather than isolation. Refugee flows overwhelm neighboring sectors. Warp instability spreads unchecked. The Imperium loses not just territory, but coherence. This reveals a truth too large to ignore. The Legion was never a miracle. It was a brace, and the brace is slipping. There are Adeptus Mechanicus projections, unsanctioned, quickly destroyed, that model Imperial survival curves with and without Legion intervention. The difference is not centuries. It is momentum. With the Legion, humanity collapses slowly, violently, but directionally, always forward, always surviving just enough to fight again. Without them, collapse becomes chaotic, irrecoverable. This is why the Legion's withdrawal, partial, selective, unexplained, is more terrifying than their presence ever was, because it suggests that something has already been decided. The Legion of the Damned does not appear where hope still exists. That is the final inversion. They do not reinforce belief. They do not answer prayer. They do not reward faith. They appear where belief has failed, but survival might still be extracted. This is why shrine worlds burn without them now. Faith alone is no longer sufficient. Somewhere in the Imperium's hidden strata, a truth is forming, slowly, reluctantly, with mounting dread. The Legion is no longer preventing extinction. It is preparing the galaxy for what comes after. After the Imperium, after the last administratum ledger closes, after the Astronomicon flickers for the final time, after Terra itself becomes a mausoleum orbiting a dead god. This does not mean the Legion serves chaos. That misunderstanding must be killed immediately. Chaos wants consumption. The Legion enforces containment. They do not revel. They do not corrupt. They do not expand. They reduce. They simplify. They burn complexity away until only essentials remain. What essentials? That question has no comforting answer. There are theories, always theories, that the Legion is slowly reshaping the Imperium's future battlefields, that by allowing certain losses, certain collapses, they are carving a narrower, harsher survival path. Fewer worlds, fewer populations, less sprawl, a humanity small enough to endure. This aligns with their newest pattern. They save infrastructure, not people. They preserve capability, not culture. They defend systems, not souls. This is not mercy. It is pruning. To the Legion, humanity is no longer a species. It is a function, and functions can be optimized. There is one more truth hidden in the silence. The Legion no longer fights like something afraid of ending. They fight like something accepting it. Earlier manifestations were desperate, overwhelming, all-consuming, burning bright against impossible odds. Now their interventions are restrained, surgical, final. They do not overcommit. They do not expend themselves unless the return is absolute. This suggests awareness, not emotion, resolution. If the Legion once burned because it could not stop, it now burns because it knows when to stop, and knowing when to stop is the first step toward ending. This brings us to the most dangerous idea ever suppressed by the Imperium, that the Legion of the Damned is not fading because it is weakening. It is fading because its task is nearing completion. Not victory, completion. What remains when the fire finishes burning? Not peace. Peace has never existed in this galaxy. What remains is a smaller war. a tighter one. A conflict with fewer variables and fewer outcomes. A galaxy simplified to its core truths. Predation, survival, silence. The Legion is not humanity's future. It is the mechanism clearing the path toward it. Whether that future contains humanity at all is unresolved. Chapter 12, and the fire was silent. It does not end with a battle. That is the last lie the galaxy tells itself. Wars feel like conclusions because they are loud, because blood, steel, and fire give the illusion of resolution. But the Legion of the Damned was never born of war. It was born of failure. And failure does not end in noise. It ends in quiet. There's no final appearance recorded. No last stand where the Legion burned brighter than ever before. No apocalyptic convergence of flame and shadow where the damned gathered to decide the fate of mankind. They simply stop. One war ends without them. Then another. Then another. At first, commanders assume coincidence. Bad timing. Warp interference. Strategic redeployment they were never meant to understand. Then the pattern becomes undeniable. The fire does not come. The galaxy keeps turning. That is the cruelest part. Planets still fall. Fleets still die in translation. Billions scream into the warp and receive no answer. The Imperium does not collapse all at once, because collapse is inefficient. It fractures. It sheds weight. It contracts. Exactly as the Legion always enforced. The final realization does not come from terror. It comes from the edges. From frontier worlds that should have been saved and were not. From space marines who fought to extinction without ever seeing flame on the horizon. From librarians who felt the warp stretch thin and empty where once it recoiled in pain. Something is missing, and it is not hope. The Legion of the Damned did not abandon the Imperium. It finished with it. There is no ceremony marking their end, because they were never meant to be remembered. They were never meant to endure. They were a consequence, one that lasted only as long as the galaxy required refusal. And now refusal is no longer efficient. This is the final truth the Imperium cannot face. The Legion was never fighting for survival. It was fighting against premature extinction, against collapse that happened too fast, too chaotically, too wastefully. It bought time, not to save everything, but to allow the end to be orderly. When the fire fades, what remains is not emptiness. It is structure. A galaxy reduced to essentials. Fewer worlds. Fewer populations. Fewer contradictions. The Imperium does not die screaming. It thins. There are rumors, always rumors, of a single Legionnaire seen standing alone on a dead world long after the last recorded manifestation. No flames. No weapons raised. Just a blackened figure watching a dead horizon. These rumors are lies. Or they are truths that do not matter anymore. Because if one Legionnaire remained, if one fragment of the damned still burned, then the function would not be complete, and completion does not allow remnants. The Legion of the Damned was not damned because it failed. It was damned because it succeeded. Think of what they were. Space Marines stripped of identity, of flesh, of future. Reduced to obligation, so pure it survived the destruction of the soul itself. Bound not by faith or command, but by the simple refusal to let the Imperium end wrong. They were never meant to be saved. They were meant to be spent. And they were. Every manifestation cost them coherence. Every battle eroded definition. Every time they answered, they lost something that could never be replaced. They burned themselves thinner with each refusal of extinction, until there was nothing left to burn. This is why there is no final message. No warning. No sign. The Legion did not leave because leaving implies intention. They simply reached zero. What remains now is a galaxy without a failsafe. No pressure valve. No refusal embedded in reality. Only consequence. The Imperium still fights. It always will. But now, when it fails fully. Worlds are no longer delayed into salvageable ruin. They are erased. Sectors no longer stagger through collapse. They snap. There's no invisible hand pushing survival just far enough forward to matter. The galaxy is honest now. Some will call this abandonment. They are wrong. Abandonment implies betrayal. The Legion never promised salvation. It promised delay, and it delivered. Others will call this damnation. They are closer. But damnation implies punishment. What happened was exhaustion. The Legion of the Damned did not ascend. It did not fall. It ended. Somewhere, in whatever passes for the warp's memory, there is no echo of them. No demon bears their mark. No god claims their remains. They did not become something else. They ceased, which may be the only mercy they were ever denied while burning. And the galaxy moves on. Not wiser, not kinder, just smaller. In the far future, if such a thing can still exist, scholars will argue whether the Legion ever truly existed at all, whether they were warp phantoms, mass hallucination, or mythologized coincidence. They will be wrong, but they will not be corrected, because correction requires witnesses, and there are none. The Legion of the Damned did not vanish in fire. Fire is loud. They vanished in silence. They were never remembered by monuments. They were remembered by nothing. And that, finally, was enough. When the stars dimmed, so did memory itself.